Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny video. And that's right, spoiler month continues, and I've got my own spoilers today. I've got 4 of them, and by popular demand, they're all going to be in one video. Alright, let's start with what I think is probably the least impactful of them, and that is Insidious. Now, I love the Inquisitor. He was awesome, but this card is not that amazing. So for 1 cost, you get a villain support. Exhaust the support to gain 1 resource if an opponent's character die is showing a blank. Now, like, paying a resource up front to exhaust the support to gain a resource is not bad, right? We've seen this works with a number of cards, like it binds all things. It can work very well with. The difference, though, with these other cards where you're paying money to get this possibility is that you have a little more control over that. Now, people generally roll blanks, right? Like if you roll out 5 dice, there's a really good chance you're gonna roll a blank, and then your next action can be, boom, use Insidious, get a resource. And so if you get Insidious turn 1 and your opponent rolls blanks for several turns, you are in business. So from that perspective, this could be amazing, right? Like it could be this way to get tons and tons of resources. The problem is, if it was simply when your opponent rolls a blank, exhaust this, get the resource, I would actually like this card. I don't know how playable it would be because of opportunity cost, but I think it would be rather good. The problem I'm having with the card is having to take an action to do this. So this is why. Your opponent rolls out their dice, they roll a blank, and you're like, booyah, I'm going to get a resource. But then you look down and they have like a 3 melee to go with it, and you have removal in your hand. And so you're like, well, I can get a resource, or I can remove the thing that's going to punch me in the face. So you remove the removal, and they re-roll the blank, and now you can't get the dollar. Now, it's really interesting because that puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, right? Maybe they didn't want to re-roll that 1 die. They wanted to roll out their other character and then re-roll. So I'm really a bit torn on Insidious. Maybe it puts your opponent in bad spots for only $1. It forces them to re-roll prematurely. Also, if you're going to use some package like what the emo kids, the Kylo Vader decks were running, where they were running all these cards that I'm not a big fan of, but stuff like anger and then manipulate. And manipulate says turn 1 of your dice to a side showing a blank, then turn an opponent's side to a blank. These can be really interesting to go with it, but again, it's like, okay, your opponent rolled out their 3 melee, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna manipulate. I'll turn it to a blank, which is what I wanted to do anyway. And now I'm gonna get a $1, and then they just re-roll that die, and now when it's your action again, it's not a blank. So I'm torn on Insidious. It's something that I'm sure I'll end up trying, just because it's so hard to get resources. It's so hard. And like I said, if it wasn't action exhaust the support, if it just happened, I would like it a lot more. I'm very curious to see if this is viable. I tend to think it's not, but it's on the edge. Like it's something worth testing to see. It's either going to be very good or very bad. I don't feel like there's a middle ground because you're having to invest that $1. And it's going to be interesting if certain decks can really exploit that. And certainly certain metas can really exploit this, right? Like if you are seeing a lot of cards with multiple blanks on it, say holocrons and stormtroopers are the meta, suddenly a card like Insidious looks a lot better. It's almost a guarantee that you will hit that. So, like I said, interesting card, not super exciting. Not sure how playable it's going to be, but maybe it's going to be a playable card. All right, appraised. So it looks like we've got Rebels, Star Wars Rebels Lando here. It seems like we've got a Rebel set, so no surprise there. An interesting card for 0. Okay, I'm very interested already. It costs 0. Remove 1 of your dice showing a resource to play a support from your hand, decreasing it by 2. So This is definitely going along with what FFG said, that supports are going to get more support. Let's compare this to other cards that exist. So Logistics is probably the best comparison. Logistics is essentially the same card, only way more flexible, but also slower, right? So Logistics basically says, there's a resource showing, I'll play it 4-0 and take 2 resources instead, which does give your opponent a window to take it. This happened to me endless times. For instance, last night I was playing against a fun card deck, and I rolled my guy, showed my dollar, it was great. My opponent rolls out his own card, shows the double disrupt side. I have to now spend my 2 resources, and can't then Logistics, because he will immediately take those resources. And so Logistics, it became this cat and mouse game of, can I bait him into a reroll? Can I bait him into pulling a card from my hand, which, by the way, is going to be bad for me, but maybe let me play a Logistics. Appraised gets around this very well and just says, boom, there we go. So it's like you lose that flexibility, but you gain the speed. And so I think this card could see play alongside Logistics in the right deck, to be honest, and that would be, to me, the strongest spot for it. Just this, are we finally going to cross that threshold where resources actually become plentiful? That would be a scary idea and kind of amazing. So in a vehicle deck, or support deck generally, I could see this working. You're going to need quite a few supports, but I think if you're running, say, Hera, Reckless Reentry, Ghost, that whole package that goes with that, I think Appraised becomes a really solid card in that deck. I'm probably still running Logistics, but maybe not. Again, I keep saying this in all my spoiler reviews, that with set 3, we are really entering a new era where opportunity cost becomes a real thing. And what I mean by this is, in a vacuum, this is a fine card. This deck is only 30 cards. It's only 30 cards, and if I want doubles of most of them, it's maybe 18, 19 cards at the most. Does Appraised really make that cut? And I don't know. I think it probably does in a vehicle deck, and it's going to be interesting to see. All right, lead by example. 2 cost, not great sides. So you're looking at this and you're like, I mean, if I wanted only plus sides, I'd take the jetpack, thank you very much. But it has a very interesting ability. When you activate attached character, you may activate one of your supports. Now, that's not that great, right? It just sort of speeds up your turn slightly, which usually in a support deck isn't that great. Like, it's not like you're going to go first very often, so you're not getting around. He doesn't like you with this very well. It doesn't let you immediately resolve it. It's just getting it out there a little faster. As I keep saying, if there is a cheat card for this to work a little better with like something with vehicles specifically, it could work really well. But it does work already as a combo piece. So if you have something like hit and run, so you put this on your guy, say Hera, and you go hit and run, activate Hera, activate that vehicle, now you can just immediately resolve it. And that is pretty strong. And you can also do this with, say, C-3PO, activate C-3PO first, and then do it, and then your action might simply be, oh, well, it rolled the 3 shields, I'll turn that into 3 damage. Or whatever you need. Maybe it rolls 3 damage and you turn it into 3 money and get another support. So lead by example to me right now feels like more of a combo card. It also would work with something like Tactical Mastery, where you could, do the exact same thing with dark side vehicles. So that part is kind of exciting. It is neutral, so it can go in anything. It's both neutral and gray, so it can go in anything, and I like that. It just kind of feels like a 1-cost upgrade that costs 2. And whenever I see that, my initial reaction is always like, ugh, I don't know if I can play that overcost thing. So we'll have to see. I do like the combo potential with it, and if there end up being more combo pieces to go with it, I could see lead by example being a really critical combo enabler in one of these decks. It also does have that +1, that +2. So if you do go like hit and run into a pretty good side on your vehicle, into the +2 on the lead by example, and another damage on your character that you rolled out, it could just simply be like hit and run 6-7 damage. And that's really strong off of a hit and run. Now we're looking at, you know, like thermal detonator range only to one dude. Like, that becomes really terrifying, actually. You're like, okay, my Vader's got 7 health. He's fine. I'll do this. And then they're like, roll in with hit and run, Vader's dead. And you're like, he has 7 health. What do you mean he's dead? Like, that is a real game-changing moment. It's like, you know, a no mercy kind of play. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see if people gravitate toward their vehicle decks as sort of this combo-y approach, or if they just go more into the, I'm using Hera, I'm doing the reckless reentry tricks, I'm just trying to pile up vehicles and overwhelm your removal. I don't need to spend 2 of my hard-earned dollars on this card when I could be spending them on more and more vehicles. So I'll be really interested to see which way people go. Like I said, if this thing costs 1, it would be amazing. At 2, I don't know. If there's more ways to cheat and more ways to combo this, then yeah, I'll definitely try it. Just off of hit and run, I don't know. I'm not sure that's enough. I don't think it probably is, but we'll see. All right, the last card I have for you is the most exciting, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. This is a pretty cool card. It costs 4, so we're looking at Slave 1 territory. That's just how I operate here. It's a villain, it's a vehicle, it's Slave 1. Comparing it to Slave 1, numbers-wise, it's quite a bit worse. So Slave 1 has still that 2 and the 3, but the 3 does not cost a money, and then it has a 4 instead of a +3. So that's a huge difference. It also has a resource so that you can bait and switch it and do cool things there. So, like, from an initial glance, the TIE Fighter is a lot worse than Slave 1. But it does have this really cool special. Slave 1 special is pretty irrelevant. It's force an opponent to deal damage to their character equal to the number of dice in their dice pool. And they can work around that. Like, that's not that hard to work around. If your opponent has a Slave 1 out, you don't just keep rolling in all your guys and then be like, yeah, I got 20 dice. Like, you just don't do that. So you can work around it. Whereas Vader's TIE Fighter special is really destructive and scary. Like, this might be the scariest special in the game other than Crime Lord. So let's say your 9s has 6 damage on him and a shield, though. So he's got 6 health left. Like, you're fine. You're totally fine. And then your opponent rolls in the TIE Fighter and kills him because he does 6 damage to him with the special. That is a hell of a lot of damage. You're playing Palpatine. He's got 8 damage on him. You roll the special. You kill Palpatine. So the upside of this card is nearly the highest upside we have in the game. The problem with the card is, how do you get that special? First of all, how do you hit the special? It's a 1 in 6. And then how do you reliably use it? I mean, this may be a scenario where you just use Throne Room and just go things like this would be so freaking amazing. You go a red-blue deck. You do 8 damage to Palpatine over the first 2 turns. Turn 3 is Tactical Mastery. Roll in TIE Fighter. Emperor's Throne Room. Palp's dead. Like, that is the sickest play ever. And your opponent is just like, wait. What? So that's really great. So if we can find more ways to protect this die, to enable this die, this is going to be a really, really strong closer. The problem is it costs 4. So most decks that can afford this, it's going to take them sort of a little while to get going. The question will be, is there going to be ways to, help the villain vehicles? We've already seen Hera being able to do tons of cheating out of vehicles and things like that. Like, if this was with Hera, this would be insane. Like, if this was a hero card, it would be broken because you'd have 3PO sitting there. It would be free with Hera. It would be totally absurd. So thinking just of some ways to be able to make this happen. Like I said, you have Tactical Mastery. Datapad now becomes kind of a reasonable idea, right? You just hit that special on Datapad and boom, you get your TIE Fighter. Force Speed, I think, would be really good with him. To do something like, being able to chain some specials together. If you have like Datapad and the TIE Fighter out, and then you have Force Speed and you hit the special on the Force Speed, and then you get that reroll to hit either the Datapad or the TIE Fighter, and then whichever one you hit, you trigger and go. There's a lot of possibilities, and maybe just throne room, right? Maybe that's just enough. You have throne room with this, and you're always threatening to kill. This is the scariest late game threat ever. All I have to do is half the damage to your last character, and then I claim and kill you, right? Like, this is Mind Probe even more. The problem is Mind Probe's free because you played it off of a holocron. So I'm going to be really excited to see if people are able to incorporate the TIE Fighter, the TIE Advanced, I guess it is. If people are able to find a way to find a deck that both can play this to the board and do enough damage to make it valuable, right? In a lot of these decks for Darkside that can play this, it's a really slow kind of build-up deck and takes a little while. And as we saw with SOR, there's not a lot of slow building up. You better come out of the gates firing. And just getting, like, the difference is if you get Slave 1 to the board, it's just damage. Doesn't matter how much damage is on your opponent. It's just piles of damage. It's scary. Whereas this thing isn't that scary until it's terrifying. So it's a really interesting card. It's a really exciting card. I don't know what to make of it. This is one of those cards where I won't know if it's going to be good until we see the rest of Empire at War. I feel like right now we've got some helpers for it, but I don't know if it's enough, and I'm really excited to see. So we see something like with Hux reducing the cost of stuff, and then Imperial backing. Like, we could get this turn 1 for like nothing, and if we can pull that off, and then do a bunch of damage turn 1. Every turn you're threatening to kill a dude. Like, that's terrifying. So I'm really excited for the card. I think there's definitely going to be some creative, cool Tier 2 decks that incorporate this. It's just, for me, I'm that crazy person that's like, I only pretty much play Tier 1 decks. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a Tier 1 Vader's ship deck. I kind of hope there's not, because that's going to be the most terrifying, absurd thing ever, where you're just like, who can get their opponent to half dead first? That person wins and claims the throne room. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to the rest of Empire at War. There's been a number of cool cards spoiled so far. Hopefully you guys are all enjoying all the spoilers from everybody. And hopefully I'll see you all at Gen Con, which is coming up really, really soon. And I'll see you next time on Tiny Grams Games.